He told me he couldn't swallow tablets. It was a Thursday, which meant late-night shopping, and the store wouldn't close for another hour. I was stocking bottles of vitamins in the lifestyle aisle when his presence caught me off guard. To tell the truth, vitamin prices were getting insane, and I had taken to swiping a bottle or two, then fudging the sheets. The kid just stared at me. After a stretch of silence, trying to determine whether or not he understood what he saw, he simply said, "Hello." Hi," I replied. "What are you doing?" He seemed like a polite kid, so I explained what vitamins were and why our bodies needed them. He stuck by my side while I refilled the shelves, and after a while, I started handing him a few containers. Kids jump at the chance to feel useful. "Mind putting this down at the bottom there?" He read the label. "Does fish oil taste like fish fingers?" "Not at all. Want to try?" I asked, jokingly. I wouldn't actually give a kid medication he wasn't meant to have, even if it were harmless. "I can't swallow tablets," he said, turning red. At 9 p.m., the only sound was the hum of fluorescent lights. Everybody had left, gone home to their families. Everyone except the kid. And then it got weird. He still followed me up and down the aisle, asking questions. I had work to do, needed to lock the doors, but I couldn't just send him outside in the dark. "Where are your parents?" I asked. It had been a full hour by now. "Bargo." I have lived here for 7 years, and I hadn't heard of a town called Bargo. "Where is that?" "Virginia." That was 2 states over. "Kid, who are you here with?" "Dave. He is my uncle." "Is he parked somewhere nearby?" The kid shook his head. He looked about 6 years old, maybe as old as 8. "Does Dave have a number?" "I am not supposed to use the phones." I sighed, knowing what I would have to do next. If no one showed up by 9:30 p.m., I would have to contact the police. After about 20 more minutes, a portly man in a red sweater pulled up to the store window. "Callum? Callum, are you there?" he called. I went to the front and unlocked the door, Callum in tow. The man gripped my hand. "Thank God for you, sir. I almost had a heart attack. His parents would kill me if they knew where he was." "He is a good kid. I am glad I could help," I said. I had enjoyed my time with Callum. He reminded me of myself when I was a kid, but softer in his curiosity. The man put his arm around Callum's neck and yanked him into a hug. "He is a little nervous when he thinks he is low on his prescription meds. I keep telling him we still have a whole sleeve of tablets left at home." Callum and his uncle left together in his car. The man had seemed so kind, but as he opened the door for Callum, he smacked the back of his head. It wasn't until I was twisting the key in the padlock, closing down the store, that the thought occurred to me. Callum couldn't swallow tablets. Up next, I learned to count my uncle's footsteps to survive, and now I hear them outside my door again. I've heard them ever since I started living with my uncle, after my dad killed my mom, and then himself. He was a notorious family killer, and I only survived because I was at a friend's house that night. According to the police, a note was left on his body, asking God for forgiveness. His brother, my Uncle Tommy, took me in after. It was a gesture that would have been heartwarming if Tommy wasn't a violent alcoholic with a laundry list of neurological issues. 6 years of living with that narcissist left me with deep trauma and some weird habits. As I approached adulthood, things got worse. He would run his fingers through my hair and tell me I was aging nicely. Because of him, I can count footsteps in a darkened home. I know the sound of bare feet clinging to linoleum or sweaty socks sticking to the floor as a towering figure stumbles drunkenly. The jingling of keys still spikes my anxiety, specifically the sound of 6 keys. But that was only the beginning of my nightmare. I have escaped him now, and I live with a coworker named Derek. And then things got weird. He lets me rent a room for $100 a month as long as the landlord doesn't find out. One day, while working our assembly line at the warehouse, I heard a high-pitched whining. It was infrequent, but I noticed a return box in the reject bin with several small holes punctured in it. The whining was coming from inside. I tore it open and nearly retched. What kind of person ships a kitten as a return? She couldn't have been older than a few weeks. I cradled her in my arms as my supervisor Mike waddled over. He told me to just toss it outside. I felt a rage that I'm sure leads to murder, but I just walked away and took her to a vet. They didn't even charge me because the situation was so appalling. I named her Boxes. She's a fat sack of crap now, always cuddling on my chest and making it difficult to breathe. Because of my past, I'm very cautious at night. I never sleep easily, and the slightest noise startles me. Some of that tension was alleviated by Boxes sleeping right under my chin, even if she does snore like an asthmatic truck driver. But 2 weeks ago, the first odd occurrence began. I heard footsteps on the carpet. They weren't Derek's inconsistent shuffles. They were soft thuds in a constant rhythm that was eerily familiar. It was exactly how my Uncle Tommy walked. I reached for the switchblade under my pillow while Boxes protested. Whoever was outside my door was stepping back and forth, just like my uncle used to do when I started locking my door. Then came the soft knocks and a dragging sound against the wood. Eventually, I passed out from exhaustion. Then, last week, a loud bang startled me awake. It sounded like a body hitting the ground. I stared at my door, which was now ajar. The air felt stale, hot, and humid. I buried myself under the covers as I felt the bed indent from the weight of Boxes, but the pressure was too heavy for a cat. I was safe from my uncle, but something far worse entered. I heard a soft wheezing right beside my head. I didn't leave the covers for the rest of the night. A few nights later, I heard voices in my closet. It was my mother and father, replaying their final argument. I heard my father ask for me, then a deafening gunshot, followed by another. I fell to the floor and cried. I survived my father, but this was a different terror. Boxes walked over and sat on my chest. Her weight was crushing, and her purr sounded like a gurgle full of phlegm. I escaped my family, but something far more dangerous had found me. 2 nights ago, I woke up to find my nightlight was off. A thin, emaciated figure with an ivory-white head and amber eyes stood at the end of my bed. It spoke to me in my uncle's voice, sounding like a butchered imitation. "You're aging so nicely." It growled when I tried to move. It crawled onto my chest, its weight nearly snapping my ribs. It looked like Boxes, but it wasn't. The next morning, I finally opened a note that my supervisor Mike had found in the return box with the kitten. The note read, "This kitten was born out of a litter of 6, and something is extremely wrong with it. I have to pass this demon on to someone else. She kept getting heavier and heavier despite being a normal size. I woke up in the middle of the night, and it tore my husband's throat open. It was eating him, yowling the entire time. I couldn't pry it from his corpse. Lord forgive me, but I tried to kill it or get rid of it, but it would come back as a newborn no matter how many times I tried. I am so sorry." Up next. My vision is so bad I didn't realize the thing that saved me wasn't my mother. My better eye is -11. My worst one is -14. At anything below -10, the world becomes a palette of colors with shapes distinguishable only by intuition. I don't know how I ended up with such messed up genetics. Both of my parents only need reading glasses. My dad is a sea captain, and when I was a kid, I wanted to be just like him. When I realized that wouldn't be possible, I focused on my second biggest dream: the water. I was the son of a sea captain, and if I couldn't conquer the ocean, I wanted to be swallowed by it. We lived by the sea, which gave me plenty of opportunities to try my chances at drowning. My parents weren't happy, not because they weren't concerned, but because I was a great swimmer. The real issue was money. Letting me swim in the sea meant having to buy a new pair of glasses every month. I lost them so often that most of my vague apologies blur together, along with the fuzzy shape of my mother's disappointed face. I remember one time in particular, though, when I managed to not only lose my glasses, but also nearly drowned. I was 7 at the time, teasing the sea to come and get me. But things were about to get much worse. I looked at my mom, sunbathing on the shore one last time, before the ocean grabbed me and refused to let go. Before I even realized what was happening, the water ripped my mouth open and stormed in. I was trapped. I saw the light somewhere above me, but it was far out of reach, constantly covered by new surges of water. Soon, I saw my very first eclipse of the sun as the light disappeared behind a shadow. That shadow then pulled me out of the water and held me close to its chest. I heard my mom's voice repeating, "Oh my God, you are safe," over and over again. I wrapped my arms around her neck and let her carry me to the shore. I didn't cry because the sea had already cried for me. My mom dried me with a sandy towel. Even though I couldn't see her face, I remember how scared she was. That was the only time she didn't scold me for losing my glasses. I felt safe, but the real mystery was just beginning. She kept saying she thought she lost me. I've never felt as loved as I did in that moment. I stumbled on our way home. After my mom made dinner, I listened to her read me a book. Nothing calmed me down as fast as that story. I fell asleep early that evening. The last thing I remember is her giving me a goodnight kiss as darkness embraced me. My next memory is being woken up by the front door unlocking. It was the middle of the night. A person was standing in the hall. When she saw me, she screamed. I would recognize my mom's voice anywhere, but I didn't understand why she kept asking me how I got home. My parents are the only people who treat this story seriously. For that entire day, my mom was convinced I had drowned. She only got home after she gave her statement to the police. I still wonder who rescued me and brought me home that day. I remember her face as an oval shape with 3 holes, just like every other face from the days without my glasses. It could have been anything. Up next, that sickly sweet scent of decay hits me first. Then I hear my wife singing the lullaby. Sitting up in bed and rubbing my temples, I felt that familiar feeling come over me. My wife was so loving, so deeply affectionate toward our little Roxanne. I remember when she was first born, I shamefully grew a little jealous. I quickly remembered that this was natural. A mother's love is a force to be reckoned with, and I, a mere mortal man, was no exception to the rule. And if that mockingbird don't sing, Mama's gonna buy you a diamond ring. I stared at the monitor, tears welling up in my eyes. I felt so blessed to have her, so blessed to be able to experience this life with her, through the good times and the bad. I couldn't have asked for a better family. My daughter's crib continued to sway gently back and forth as her mother sang. And if that diamond ring turns brass, Mama's gonna buy you a looking glass. I figured it was time to go get her. This wasn't the first time I'd had to take over during one of her late-night trips to Roxanne's bedroom. She looked so exhausted and mentally drained. And if that looking glass gets broke, Mama's gonna buy you a billy goat. But then things got even darker. I carefully pushed my daughter's door open and approached my wife as gently as I could. The first thing that hit me, the first thing that hits me every time I enter my daughter's room, was the smell. That sickly sweet scent of decay and rot. The smell that my wife and I tried our best to ignore for the last 3 years. And that was just the beginning. I found my wife going through her usual routine, cradling the blanket that held what remained of our little girl as she rocked back and forth, eyes closed contently. Though her eyelids were shut tightly, tears still ran down her face as she continued to sing. I placed a light hand on her shoulder before pulling her into a hug as she began to sob uncontrollably. I tried my best not to look at the skeletal remains that were propped against my wife's shoulder, but much like most nights, they still caught my eye. This caused me to cry too as I hugged my wife tighter. I swore I could hear cooing coming from under the blanket, the soft pouts of my little girl. I told myself that I was imagining it. I nearly convinced myself it wasn't real. But even so, the cooing persisted, causing me to slightly lose my grip on reality. Through the madness, through the tears, through the years of silent heartache, all I could think to tell the woman I married was the same thing I'd been telling her for the past 3 years. I know, honey. I miss her too. Up next. At Don Pepe's hacienda, the sunset rule was a matter of survival. Dad found the place hidden on a steep hill covered by large trees. Despite the old man yelling at him to go away, they became fast friends. For years, my family visited once or twice a year, enjoying what looked like a paradise. That rule always stood, until the day Don Pepe looked more tired than usual and fell asleep before we could leave. Worried for his health, we decided to stay the night to care for him. In the middle of the night, we heard loud screams. I saw Don Pepe's dismembered hand and a goat that quickly snatched it and ran off. Don Pepe claimed it was a wood-chopping accident, which made no sense, but he wouldn't budge. My parents tried to get him to a hospital, but he refused and told us to leave in the morning. We continued to visit occasionally after that. Besides that one terrible night, I had nothing but fond memories of the forest. On one of my dad's surprise visits, he found that Don Pepe had been dead for several weeks. Surprisingly, the farm animals had not touched his body. He left a will giving my dad the hacienda, but with the condition that he sell it immediately. But we should have listened to that warning. He also wrote not to worry about the animals, as they were being taken care of. While my dad was saddened, he decided to respect those wishes. Right before selling, he proposed that our whole family stay one night to enjoy the place one last time. We made the hour-and-a-half drive from Mexicali, pushing our old Prius up that steep hill. My cousin Javi and all my aunts followed behind. The hacienda was beautiful, with talavera floors that made me feel like I was walking through a magical castle. Javi was excited to explore, so I guided him toward the farm stalls and called the animals by the names Don Pepe had given them. When we neared the goats, I saw a large brown one named Bubbles tied up alone. I untied him, telling him to go be free, and watched him disappear into the forest. The rest of the day was perfect, filled with family dinner and stories. That night, I had strange dreams of red eyes gleaming at the edge of the forest and a low growl. When I woke up, I realized I wasn't in my bedroom. I was outside, barefoot, with a searing pain in my leg from an anthill. I had sleepwalked deep into the forest and had no idea how to get back. Then Bubbles appeared. I followed the goat through the dense trees, my feet bleeding and bruised from the rocks and roots. Every step was agony, and the forest was eerily quiet. No birds, no squirrels. I felt like we were being followed. As the day reached its end, we finally made it back to the hacienda. I was glad to be back, but the silence from the forest now extended to the farm. The nightmare was just getting started. As I limped toward the house, a putrid smell hit me. I saw the animals frantically eating a disgusting feed. In the chicken coop, something shiny caught my eye. It was my mom's ring. When I reached for it, I realized my mom's finger was still attached. I screamed as the chickens went back to picking at the flesh. I ran toward the house, ignoring the pain in my feet. Everything was falling apart, and we were trapped. The Prius was still in its spot, but the cream-colored hacienda was now stained red. There was blood and meat everywhere. I found Javi hiding in his room, clutching 2 knives. He was terrified. He had seen what happened to his mother. We had to get to the cars, but we didn't have the keys. We made a run for my parents' room, stepping over dismembered parts on the floor. Bubbles followed us inside. Javi found the keys, but as we headed out, impossibly large wolves with dark fur and red eyes blocked our path. I told Javi to run for the car while I acted as a distraction. The wolves ignored me and tackled Javi just as he reached the Prius. I realized then what they wanted. I crawled to a wood stump, put my left hand on it, and held up my knife. I yelled to the wolves that I knew what they needed. I sawed off my own hand. Bubbles picked it up and brought it to the wolves. They let Javi go and swallowed the offering. I begged Javi to leave before sunset. He didn't want to leave me, but I knew he had to go.
I watched him drive down the hill and stayed there until the sun finally set. I never saw Javi again. I hope he is well. My family didn't make it, and I took Don Pepe's place as the caretaker. People show up from time to time, and I make sure to kick them out, no matter what. 2 young men recently installed Wi-Fi, and while I've grown fond of them, they are never allowed to stay the night. If you ever find a hacienda in the middle of nowhere, do not approach it. And if you do, make sure to leave before sunset.